Hey, hey, it's me. I'm here. I'm turning on my audios. Hey, we're doing more book stuff today. Why is it showing the Twitch screen on? I've got the book screen. There it goes. Okay, it was just showing me a delayed, I guess, side of my screen. So hopefully that doesn't continue. But yeah, so we're going back into Batman Rise of Sin Tzu, the official video game novelization today. Last chapter, we followed Freddie Galen, a guy from Stonegate, who Sin Tzu's ninjas were like, oh, this guy obviously works for Batman, you're not fooling us. And they ended up killing him. He really liked to piss his pants. He said that a bunch of times. But Freddy's dead now. The final nightmare. It's old movies, if for those of you who don't get the reference, but I'm sure most of us get the reference. We all like a good scare here and there, right? Well, you better, because today our protagonist is the Scarecrow. For those of you who haven't joined us before, typically I would read a chapter and then we would go back through it later on to do notes in our little canonicity and timeline spreadsheet. However, doing it that way takes a lot of time. Last time we decided we're just gonna take the notes as we read. I've got the book scanned and available to read along on the screen, so we're just gonna go ahead. We're gonna jump into it. We've got chapter 3, Jonathan Crane / the Scarecrow, taking place at 12:27 a.m. My name is Professor Jonathan Crane, and I am the master of fear. It took me a long time to figure out why I, myself, had been sent to Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane, but I finally realized it must be due to my counterphobia. That is, a preference by a phobic for fearful situations. That, or they're still going on about my fear gas being dangerous and illegal. Within the stony walls of Arkham Asylum, they call me the Scarecrow. That's a slight improvement over Ichabod, my childhood nickname based on my resemblance to the fictional character Ichabod Crane. By resemblance, my foolish young tormentors meant chiefly that I was scrawny and bookish and painfully shy. But I thought Ichabod was a rather wonderful character. He would have been a proper hero had he but overcome his fear. Fear, you must understand, is more than a mere obstacle. Fear is a teacher. The first one you ever had. It's hardwired into our brains, part of our chemical makeup. Just like the sensation of pain and the urge to procreate, it is foolish to dismiss fear as a mere emotion, or worse yet, as an uncontrolled and transitory reflex. Fear is a religion. Not the one we preach, the one about the golden rule, but the one we live day to day, dollar to dollar, the unspoken conviction that there's not enough of anything in this world, and that no one's got your back. The utter moral certainty that you've got no choice but to watch out for numero uno, because it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and only the fittest survive. Fear of starvation is what first prompted you to smile at your mother. Fear of social ostracism is what first made you desperate to please your father. Humans are gregarious, group-oriented animals by nature. Instinctively, we know that we cannot survive on our own. More than anything, we fear isolation and social exclusion. Fear of failure, you see, is fear of social embarrassment. You might get laughed at, but fear of success is fear of social ascendancy. You might be perceived as a threat and expelled from your group. I suppose I'm a pretty good example of that myself. None of this is conscious, of course. We don't wake up thinking about these things or discuss them at dinner parties, but we know the fear in our guts. All of us. And how these times embrace it. Today, our government feeds us fear. It's our national diet. Cereal and a spoonful of fear. Beer and a fear chaser. hamburgers with an order of supersized fear on the side. And really, why shouldn't we be afraid? In case you haven't heard, life is terminal. Cigarettes will kill you. So will your cell phone, your microwave, the power lines, the squirming germs that raw meat leaves behind on your kitchen counter, and the chemical cleaners you neutralize them with. All potentially lethal. Your car is a deadly weapon. Alcohol, a quiet killer. Too much fat, too much sugar, too much exercise, or not enough. Don't lick the lead-based paint on your windowsills. Don't lick the back of that postage stamp. And don't lick any strangers. Oh, that can take you down quickly indeed. Don't drink the water and don't drink less than 8 glasses a day. Hold your breath in traffic. Off-gas your furniture. Stock up on duct tape. Don't talk to strangers, and if you're female, don't go home. You're more likely to be a victim of domestic violence than of burglary, mugging, or any other type of physical assault combined. Your environment is toxic. Your natural resources are dwindling. Your days are numbered. But whatever you do, don't panic. The stress, don't you know, will kill you. Why? For the last few years, even intelligence has become suspect and untrustworthy. Intellectuals have agendas, after all, and their agendas will seek to destroy the core of wholesome goodness we pretend to hide behind our prejudice and greed. At the very least, they'll make fun of us. We don't just suspect or believe this, we fear it. And fear, you must believe me, runs ever so much deeper than faith, which is why it makes such a powerful weapon. Yes, fear is a religion, and I am its avatar. I have learned to synthesize the compound that triggers fear in the human brain. You would not believe the elegance of this organ we hide in our skull, the ultimate receptor. It speaks a language of chemical threads and electrical impulses, producing its only hormonal neurotransmitters that it has cleverly designed to break down soon after their release. Okay, so these first couple pages, let's see, we've got, well, if it'll load up, we've got Jonathan Crane / the Scarecrow. You know, nothing we couldn't have gotten from the title. Let's see, we had mention of Arkham Asylum, but we've already had that so many times. This is another instance of cell phones early on in the DCAU. I don't think that it makes it non-canon per se, but maybe I'll just put it in the objects. Because it'll be interesting to kind of go through and see what the history of cell phones was over time. And that we've got, let's see, it's 12:27 a.m. And then let me put another couple rows below that. I was going to do that before, but forgot to. Let's see, we had what? It was for the last few years, even intelligence has become suspect and untrustworthy. I wonder if there's anything in specific that they were trying to evoke from that line. Because I'm thinking about, like, they said that, you know, you can't trust the government runs on fear, etc., 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 which sounds a lot to me like, you know, the war on terror and all of that in the early 2000s. So I'm wondering if, like, them talking about intelligence being untrustworthy is tied into that, maybe, you know, as like the Patriot Act and all that stuff, where like the government could start surveilling you. They're talking about intellectuals though, so I'm not entirely sure. Wait, what don't you get, Den? Was it the Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare? That's the name of a of one of the Freddy Krueger movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. This better be about the Zeta Project. Well, you know, If they ever released a Zeta Project book, I would read it, but they ain't done it yet. I hope that they will. But yeah, let me go back to the pages. I have invented nothing, really. All I can claim credit for is beefing up some of those neurotransmitters to make them hit harder and last longer. I can administer it as a serum, but I prefer gas. There's nothing like blasting someone in the face with a billow of green smog to really get their adrenaline going, even before the chemicals take effect. People are just inherently afraid of green smog. Fear isn't green, of course, but I add food coloring. Legends, after all, are made by the details. Not that I expect the world will make much of my legacy. Nothing to fear but fear itself? Ridiculous. We are afraid of fear. Sin Tzu understands this. In all my time at Arkham, there has been only one man intelligent enough to comprehend the significance of my studies, to wish to build upon them in new and stimulating ways. Indeed, I must credit the genius of tonight's plans to Arkham's newest resident, the mysterious Sin Tzu. He approached me in the rec room several months ago while I was quietly minding my own business, sitting in an old Victorian chair of ragged, worn jacquard, once a vibrant red, but now so faded and stained as to seem perfectly in keeping with the rest of the institutional furniture. I was reading a dog-eared copy of Poe when a chilly shadow fell across the chair. I squinted up to see him standing over me with a sort of regal bearing, appearing not at all afraid of my gruesome rags, Old West tombstone style, Undertaker's hat, skull mask, or even the noose I wear around my neck. Dr. Jeremiah Arkham is an interesting man. He allows those of us who enter his facility in costume, as he says, to remain so clothed, hoping that it will shed light on our individual pathologies. Sin Tzu's lack of response to my appearance was disappointing, but intriguing. He himself was terrifying without being macabre. Gleaming gold skin accented by long dark hair and a sort of exotic cast to his features. He stared at me with opaque, narrowed, soulless eyes of white, a red and black tattoo seeming to swirl in the center of his forehead. I'd never seen him in the rec room before. I looked to the guards, but they were staring blankly into space, their minds apparently elsewhere. The entire time I spoke with Sin Tzu, they moved not a muscle. Perhaps they were afraid of him. Eventually, the stranger spoke in a cool, cultured voice. "They call you Scarecrow, do they not?" I flashed him a ghastly grin and nodded my agreement. "They tell me you are an expert in the ways of fear." I rose out of my chair and stood eye to eye with him, smiling at his frown. No stench of sweat rose from within his clothing, so I circled him slowly, letting one of my chemical-tainted hands trail lightly around the breadth of his shoulders, listening for any changes in his breathing, watching for unbidden spasms of muscle tension. He remained utterly tranquil. Interesting. "I am," I said at last, cocking my head and squinting my eyes at him as I came to stand once again before him. "I want to ask you, what do you imagine might be the psychological effect on the Batman were we to release all the inmates of Stonegate Prison into the streets of Gotham one night?" "Fear response, of course," I answered evenly, attempting to hide my excitement. "All the inmates in Stonegate? Every one of the more than 1,400 of them?" Alright, really quick. Let's see. Sin Tzu was brought in now, but we kind of know about him already from other chapters, so I'm not worrying about it. We got, what was it? Dr. Jeremiah Arkham. Is in the mix now. I don't think we ever got him on screen or in the comics. The tie-in comics, at least, you know. Probably got them in, like, the main DC Universe comics. We got a mention of Edgar Allan Poe. And let's see, Sin Tzu approached Scarecrow in the Rec Room months ago. Something that did stick out to me as potentially making this non-canon is that it says that they're allowed to keep their costumes, which I think sometimes we see them in costume in the shows, but a lot of the times we don't. So it's more of a question, I guess, than a bit of non-canon. And let me put Edgar Allan Poe over here in the pop culture stuff as well. I'm curious. They have, when they said Old West Tombstone, that's all capitalized. So is that like a reference to something? Old West Tombstone. See, there's nothing's popping up exactly like that. I got Old Tombstone Western Park, but that's it. And what is this? What is this word Jacquard? Jacquard. Not is your card. What? Okay, well, I'll just type that one in. Okay, so it's a type of fabric. Alright, well then that's not really important to me. Let me pop over to the next page. Wait, what's somebody's fetish? Fear? Fear is a, fear could be a fetish. From the Mower-Miller theory. He nodded and then recited. A covert and unobservable response to a threatening or noxious situation.
Job, Robin.
Hey, thanks for following. Who was that? JaxMax777. Glad to have you on board. From the Mower-Miller theory, he nodded, and then recited, a covert and unobservable response to a threatening or noxious situation that is nonetheless assumed to function as a stimulus for production of measurable physiological changes in the body. I could not hide a beam of delight. In addition to perceptible overt behavioral changes, yes, you've done some reading. I paused and sank slowly back into my chair thinking, emptying Stonegate would not be enough, though, to stop the Batman for long. His response to terror is very systematic. He would simply round up said criminals one by one, even if it took him a week without food or sleep. I agree, said Sin Tzu, thereby convincing me of his intelligence, which is why that would only be phase 1 of the campaign. I lifted my eyes to him again, intrigued. It's not often one gets to enjoy a civilized conversation in the asylum. And what would constitute phase 2? I asked, letting my fingers toy with the rough rope of the noose around my throat. You, said Sin Tzu evenly, and so began a 3-hour conversation. I confess, I glazed over a bit while he was describing the particulars to me. I was too busy analyzing his particular neurosis. He strikes me as a sort of self-taught master of free-floating anxiety, which, of course, is only an accurate assessment if there is, indeed, no specific situation or reasonable danger to which to attribute anxiety. In his case, this is probably a dicey assertion. He also mentioned voices once or twice. There's nothing like a schizophrenic mastermind to get the party going. In any case, I was back on board when he disclosed some sort of marvelous hypnotic abilities in his possession that could be used to send a guard to my cell with a neatly packed plastique pipe bomb at a pre-designated time on the next moonless night. All I had to do was set the explosive against the wall, trigger it, stand back as far away from it as possible, and then, subsequent to the explosion, dash out of the resulting hole and make my way to the D'Angelo sewage treatment plant. There, a band of hand-picked psychos would be awaiting my commands, themselves having been freed within moments of my own escape. I praised the simple brilliance of his plan. It struck me as an excellent way to gauge the effects of extreme stress on the Batman's psyche. It would produce marvelous levels of testable fear, and I could be conducted on the kind of scale my experiments demanded. That is when he confessed that my approval meant more to him than I could know. It turned out that he needed me. I was to serve as a sort of captain for him, he playing the part of the brave general planning the attack. I revised my opinion of Sin Tzu's complex. A telephobia, perhaps. Fear of imperfection. It is possible, too, that Sin Tzu suffers from some queer delusion of grandeur. After all, not just any amateur scientist can follow my analysis. I was, a professor of psychology at Gotham State University, from which I earned a doctorate in neurobiology with a minor in clinical neuropsychology and an MD in psychiatry and biomedical sciences. The majority of my studies remain unpublished, and I do not anticipate layman comprehension. We discussed my mission at great length until I became sure of two things. First, that he was entirely serious and could be counted on to uphold his end of the bargain setting me free, and second, that he was shamelessly playing to my ego. But no matter. His proposal was the basis for research I could not resist, and at the core of it was the channeled force of fear itself, and who am I, at this stage of my career, to turn down those willing to sponsor my work? So we got two things there to plop into the notes. We got this Mower-Miller theory, which I don't know anything about, but sounds like Mower-Miller theory. Let me see. Maurer, maybe. It is two-factor theory combined the learning principles. Yeah. Where's like a Wikipedia article that tells me? I'll just put it in the pop culture thing for now. It's not pop culture, but it's a real life scientific breakthrough, it seems. So, who knows? And then there was, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, there were two locations for me to add. We have the D'Angelo sewage treatment plant. And then we also had Gotham State University. All right. Next page. There we go. Okay. My studies of fundamental importance to the consideration of human physiology are always criticized as being unethical. Unethical? Ha! Notice that no one ever accuses them of being bad science. That conversation was both the first and the last I had with Sin Tzu. Curiously, I never again saw him in the rec room, nor in the commissary, nor in any other open area of the asylum, but I had no doubt that our pact was sealed. And in fact, the escape from Arkham is going without a hitch. The guard comes to my cell exactly at midnight, vacant-eyed and acquiescent, and delivers the pipe bomb as if it were a cup of chamomile tea. I set up the explosives as instructed, at times certain that I'm hearing another creepy voice inside my own skull guiding me as I fret over certain particulars. And then there is a magnificent explosion, the sound of tumbling rocks as the wall comes down, and off I run into the night. It's enchanting. Fear in the air everywhere, like a smell or a song drifting on the cool night air, punctuated by pipe bomb explosions and screams. I catch snatches of it as I run. Fear of being caught, fear of being hurt, fear of losing jobs. Oh man, this is not happening, not on my shift, Lord, please, sings one of the guards in a soaring baritone solo. Fear of the outside world, fear of the dark, fear of the dogs, fear of the guns, fear of the blast, fear feeding on itself and soaring into sweet, high melodies of terror before falling back into a quiet, steady baseline of doubt. I pay no attention to the other troops and captains escaping with me. I am too busy moving swiftly through the darkness to rendezvous with my Sin Tzu selected scaries, anxious to begin my part of the grand research project Sin Tzu has planned for the evening. The night is pitch black and moonless, and yet, within moments of our escape, the Gotham sky is ablaze with a harvest-colored searchlight. I stop in my tracks to savor the slow wave of alarm that washes over my fellow escaping inmates as they register the cookie-cutter blackness at the center of the O, beaming up into the dark. There, spread across the sky, with wings as wide as 8 city blocks on either side, is the shadow of the Bat. The Bat signal has been lit. We are no longer fleeing into the dark privacy of night. Now we flee directly into the Batman's waiting arms. I feel it too. A shiver, worry, dread. Oh, the Batman is no joke. He fades in and out of shadows like a specter, and then connects with a fist of steel. He's diabolically clever and completely without mercy. He tastes like an overamped designer drug. In his presence, your senses reel. He's everywhere at once, in your face, in your head, in the pit of your stomach. And then he's gone. And there is nothing but solitary confinement, hospital tapioca, and lithium. You don't know the Monday morning blues until you've been incarcerated by the Batman. I might have slipped into a self-indulgent panic had I not remembered my objective. I find my scaries waiting for me, as Sin Tzu has promised, at the D'Angelo sewage treatment plant. The only neighbor Arkham Asylum has on Mercy Island. There are over a dozen of them, some still clothed in mint green hospital gowns, but many marvelously stuffed, muscle-bound and brutish, into Halloween-themed costumes. Is fear illegal? I ask my scaries, after I, at last, round them up. Though they were waiting exactly where Sin Tzu had said they would be, they seemed not entirely prepared for my first appearance. 7 of them ran, screaming, from me the first 3 times I tried to approach them. Fortunately, they ran in ineffective circles, shrieking and waving their arms like children. And even more fortunately, the fear gas bombs Sin Tzu had promised to have waiting for me were also in place. Finally, I was forced to use anti-fear gas on them, which calmed them into a nice, bug-eyed, tongue-lolling shuffle that I think will be perfect for our mission. 2 of them cannot stop drooling, which I imagine might add to our overall effect once we hit the streets of Gotham. I try again. These chemicals are produced by the human brain, and they are to be outlawed? None of my scaries seem to have strong opinions on the matter. Several of them stare blankly back at me, shifting absently from foot to foot, as others sneer and crack their knuckles, waiting for me to point them towards our research subjects. I frown at them for a moment, and then sigh. "Who wants to go to the city?" I ask. This gets a rousing response, complete with me's, and lots of jumping up and down. I appoint a few lieutenants, distribute a few fear gas grenades, herd them into the back of a white paddy wagon, the last of Sin Tzu's gifts to me, and close them in before hopping into the front and following Rhinefeld Avenue all the way off of Mercy Island and straight down to Old Gotham, just as Sin Tzu's map indicated. Please believe me when I confess that I am a terrifying driver. I pull the van over on Munch, 3 blocks from City Hall, and let my scaries out of the back. During the ride, a few of them have acquired minor injuries, such as bruised elbows and cut knees. They're looking more and more appalling by the minute. I realize that this was probably calculated on the part of Sin Tzu. He truly is a man of vision, and, once again, I must give him a great deal of credit for the orchestration of tonight's experiment. The gas is mine, as if the specific targeting of Commissioner Gordon for the focal point of my experiment, but the simultaneous prison and asylum breakouts, and the bold omission of a control group, those were his ideas. I find him inspired. It couldn't be done without the gas, though, and let us pause for a moment to consider the brilliance of my choice in subjects. Right? Is mentioned? Yeah, Renfield. We got a mention of Munch, but I think we've gotten that already. Control F. Moench. Yeah, okay, so we've got Munch already. Do we have Gordon? No, he comes in later, but we haven't had him marked yet. Commissioner James Gordon. And, oh yeah, Smallville. Smallville's mentioned. There we go. How are y'all doing today? What's going on with you guys? I got college stuff that I gotta take care of after this, as well as I gotta shoot a video. We're trying to do extra videos now since Adventures Continue got moved. So we're trying to do those on like Wednesdays, I think, and so we need extra Sunday videos. So I gotta start pushing out some content ahead of time. That way James can have it to do. Let's see, where were we? Oh yeah. The commissioner is both easily accessed and highly important. Not only is he a beloved elected city official, he is also someone for whom the Batman has, in the past, shown personal concern. Yes, I picked Commissioner James Gordon because he is Batman's best friend. The scaries get a little out of hand the moment I release them onto the streets, but that is acceptable, is even part of the plan. One of them, I can't remember his name, but I believe he was in for eating his auto mechanic after murdering him with a blowtorch. Forgot or misunderstood my warnings about staying downwind of the fear gas I was spraying on random civilians and ended up crawling up the double yellow line of Renfield Avenue, screaming about the drive axle boots on his 66 Mustang. I had forgotten how frightening car repairs could be. I continued towards City Hall, a steady march, my ghoulish scaries skipping and scraping along behind me. While the thugs of the bunch keep their eyes peeled for danger, it is truly a glorious night. In addition to my hair-raising band of mad, messy mischief makers, there is a wild game of cops and robbers in effect. The robbers neatly costumed in orange-colored penitentiary uniforms. The cops scared out of their wits long before I blast them with my gas. It doesn't take me but a minute to find a nice shootout involving 3 police officers firing from behind a bullet-riddled squad car at 3 Stonegate escapees who have acquired automatic weapons. The ex-prisoners angrily discharge their deafening guns from the dark porches and doorways of a series of narrow apartment buildings, creating an old-fashioned standoff. I play with fight-or-flight response for a moment, moving in and out of the shadows to gas the cops with fear gas, and then the robbers with anti-fear gas, before reversing and mixing up the two until I find each individual's most aggressive stance. Interestingly enough, the cops seem to do better. That is, react more violently on the anti-fear stimulus, which inspires them to increasingly bolder acts of offensive fighting, while the Stonegate prisoners are motivated by the fear gas into heinous acts of hostility and carnage. I leave the 6 of them in the middle of the street, beating each other senseless, no longer satisfied with the indistinct, remote violence of their guns, and continue forward with my mission. I tell 3 of my loonier scaries that the 2 policemen guarding City Hall have pockets full of gold and lollipops, and sneak the others through the main door while the cops try to restrain the eager hands of the inmates suddenly besieging them. Once we have access to the building, we swing by the court evidence rooms to pick up gas masks for my accomplices. Heartened by the protective gear, the scaries become increasingly raucous, randomly attacking the various city officials unlucky enough to be working so late. Under the effects of my gas, said officials hurry to cower behind file cabinets and hide under desks, creating a wonderful game of hide and seek for my demented, barefoot, gown-clad scaries, while my beefier appointed lieutenants take up defensive positions in eager anticipation of the opportunity to fight the Batman. I ignore these festivities. Sin Tzu has assured me that the man I want to see will have set up an emergency office post on the 3rd floor. Okay.
Good job, Robin.
Well, hey, thanks for following, kitty cats of whatever that word is. Good job, Robin. All right, so we got I'm just gonna go ahead and put the scaries, I guess, as characters. They keep capitalizing that, so that seems like an official name for the group. And then we had, let's see, City Hall. Yeah. And I think that's really... Oh, a mention of a 66 Mustang. So that's a thing. There's an extra letter there. There we go. All right. Let's see. I ignore these festivities. Sin Tzu has assured me that the man I want to see will have set up an emergency office post on the 3rd floor. I run up the metal fire exit steps without incident and gas 2 officers and a civilian aide in the 3rd floor hallway. The civilian aide goes immediately to her hands and knees on the carpet, clearly experiencing environmental distortion and nausea. 10 feet past her, I can hear Commissioner Gordon's voice emanating from his office, tense and urgent. "I don't know," he's saying. "I can't raise the warden. The tactical squad is on the way." I smile as I step into his doorway and wait until he raises his eyes to meet mine. Commissioner Gordon is in his late 50s with a thick head of white hair, complemented by that ridiculous, overly generous white mustache. His eyebrows rise up from behind his glasses, and a man of action to the end, he swiftly moves to pull his gun. "Stop right there!" he cries. I watch his intelligent brown eyes register panic half a second before I lose the specifics of his face in a lovely green cloud of fear gas. He continues to fight, lunging across his desk as if planning to restrain me with his bare hands, but is finally overcome by the steady stream of aerial fear I pump at him. To his credit, I will admit that I wouldn't have thought to need this much on an elephant. "Oh my," he gasps, and then, small and tinny from a little device in his ear, I hear the voice I long to hear, the only voice that makes my blood run cold. "What is it, Commissioner?" Wanting to get closer to the voice on the other end of the earpiece, he would know soon he would say my name, I leap onto the commissioner's desk, tilting my head to one side as I crouch before him, papers scattering around me. "No!" the commissioner sobs, eyes already dilated and filling with hallucinations I can only guess at. "No! Not the noose!" I lean in closer still, pressing my ear against Gordon's as he trembles and fails to make himself move back and away from me. "The noose!" comes the Batman's voice from the earpiece. "The Hanged Man! Scarecrow! Jim! It's fear gas! Hold your breath! I'm on the way!" Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, hold your breath! He's on his way! The commissioner is heavier than I imagined, and he babbles like an over-caffeinated psychotherapist as I grab him by the armpits and drag him from his makeshift office into the elevator across the cold tile floor of the lobby, still filled with cowering law enforcement fodder, and my eager scaries, and over towards Gotham's imposing courtroom. Several of my selected captains follow, apparently abiding by Sin Tzu's orders to protect me. I have to pause as we pass the now broken glass doors at the front of City Hall, affording us a glimpse outside. The commissioner and I watch a car skid into a lamppost as the driver narrowly avoids T-boning a small band of marauders, while still radiant in their bright orange Stonegate prison jumpers. They are beautiful creatures of spite and malice, no doubt married to the chaos from the time they were snot-nosed hoodlums, pure organic acolytes of fear. One of them is playing kick the can down the center divide with a full-sized trash bin, while another manically brandishes a large baseball bat he has lit on fire, thrusting it into the faces of alarmed passerby. The third simply fires a police-issue handgun into the air at random intervals, howling like a college frat boy. Alright, so we got on those pages that Commissioner Gordon is in his late 50s. So that's good to know. Turn the page. The commissioner shudders uncontrollably at my feet, broken and sobbing. I breathe deeply, drawing the cold, polluted air into my lungs before I remember. Hold your breath. He's on his way. I'm panting by the time I lug Gordon up the polished wooden steps of the courthouse, and am glad for the interruption of his communicator, which startles him into a small yelp as it comes to life with a sudden buzzing urgency. I reach down and open the frequency. The Batman's impassive, masked face fills the small monitor, but I can hear the concern in his voice. "Jim?" I grab the commissioner by the back of his hair and yank his head up so that his face will fill the Batman's screen. "It's over, Batman," he gasps. "They control the city." "Jim!" comes the Batman's dark, carefully modulated voice. "Keep it together!" I kick him then, Gordon that is, in the kidney, just for the fun of it. He gasps in pain and fear, which I must attribute to my gas. I've seen him kicked before, and normally he shows no reaction at all. "Scarecrow!" the Batman shouts. It is partly a curse and partly a demand. I laugh and pull the commissioner away from the communicator so that I can peer directly into the Dark Knight's glowering face. His face, not his eyes. He doesn't have eyes. "This is an amazing night," I tell him. "I'm not sure who's more afraid. The citizenry or the convicts. All of us here in Western culture, we're secretly terrified of freedom, don't you think?" The Batman's non-eyes narrow. "Surely a night like this scares you, Batman. Just a little? Maybe you experience a brief arrhythmia when you'd think of what I could do to your commissioner friend now. Or feel a trickle of sweat run down the back of your cowl as you failed to keep your mind from adding up the total figure of inmates currently flooding the streets? You can't stop us all, you know." "Right now, I'm only concerned with stopping you, Crane." Crane. His attempt at unnerving me, reminding me that he knows my real name, I'll admit that it affects me, but only for a moment. I frown as I drag Commissioner Gordon the rest of the way up the stairs and into the empty courthouse, wondering idly if it's always open or if some petty criminal has forced the lock before my arrival. I stop at the feet of Justice, gazing up towards her blindfolded eyes, as Gordon continues to whimper and quake on the floor. The statue, a particularly romantic and fanciful representation of Lady Justice, by any aesthetic evaluation, towers over the judicial bench at a nice, understated height of 30 feet. I guess the Gotham magistracy felt they needed a subtle reminder as to the general definition of their jobs in between accepting bribes. The scales she holds out in one slender hand are not actually balanced despite both being empty, an artistic choice that distracted me to no end during my first trial in Gotham City. Justice is blind, love is blind, but fear sees clearly. Not that seeing clearly does you any particular good in this world. I grind my back teeth together and snatch up the communicator again. My intention is to enlighten the Batman as to the full scale of my current experiment, but suddenly my ears fill with the screeching howl of shattering glass coming from behind and above me. I turn to face a downpour of shards and a sudden awareness of icy fresh air pouring through a rude absence of window just above the entryway doors. At my feet, Gordon gives in to a fresh paroxysm of terror. I press my eyes closed and try to steady my breathing so as to fully appreciate the physiological effects of what is to come next. When I open them again, he is there in front of me, as I had known he would be, a final spray of shattered glass glistening off of his swirling cape. The Batman. I taste aluminum between my teeth, and I swallow involuntarily. My mouth and throat go dry, my breathing catches high in my chest, and my heartbeat accelerates. A cold sweat breaks out across my top lip half a second before my armpits dampen and my palms go clammy. A sudden uncomfortable tightening in the urethra is instantly answered by a loosening in my bowels. Tight, we get to hear about Scarecrow's penis and bowels. Hell yeah. That's what I've always wanted out of my DCAU. Jonathan Crane's wiener. My body is ready to purge, to flee. I can smell the secretions of endorphin and hormones seeping from my skin. In front of me... Did he shit himself? It sounds like he's about to. In front of me, he is pungent Acrid? Acrid. He's been fighting. My legs begin to shake, and it feels as though every nerve in my body rises to ripple and prickle subcutaneously. For one insane instant, I considered dosing myself with a quick blast of fear gas, just to string the glorious tension out across every fiber of my being. But before I can reach into my pocket for an aerosol, a scorching pain explodes across my jaw. My feet leave the ground, and I open my eyes to see the Batman's gloved fist retreating from me in a declining arc. I have only just realized that it's me who is moving, rather than him, when the back of my head slams into Justice's cheek. Arguments rage through the asylum cafeteria as to whether or not the Batman is human. We've all seen him do things we had previously assumed to be impossible. Now, after being sent flying backward in a 20-foot high arc by a single uppercut, I cannot easily dismiss the possibility that the Batman is, in fact, a radioactive, superpowered, bionic, undead, chemically enhanced alien. But that is dismissing the force of fear. A man capable of channeling his adrenaline could, in moments of extreme stress, easily send another, lighter man off to challenge the tyranny of gravity, as the Batman has just done. Though my mouth is filling with blood and I can feel the bruising spread across the back of my skull, I taste a moment of supreme satisfaction. I've scared him. It is this thought that fills my head as the noose around my collar catches on the fulcrum of Justice's scales. It jerks at my neck, cutting off breath. The world blurs, so the Gotham courts would hang me after all. I kick my feet in a futile effort to free myself, and then am overcome by an unfamiliar feeling of peace. Far below me, I can see the Batman turning his frowning attention from Gordon, upon whom he had just forced some sort of oxygen mask, up to the gruesome shadow I cast on the clean stone walls of the courtroom. As far as I know, they have never been splattered with blood. The Reaper! I choke, trying to tell Batman that everything is alright. Maybe this time, the Reaper will come. No! The Batman says quietly from the ground. Not this time. I struggle for breath. Let me flip the page. I struggle for breath, lose the fight, and let my eyes close. When they flutter open again, the Batman is balanced above me, crouching as he uses one of his awful silver batarangs to cut the rope that holds me. I feel a rush of air and fall unceremoniously to the ground. Within seconds, the Batman is on the ground behind me, pinching my wrist with his cold steel handcuffs. Nearby, the Commissioner rises unsteadily to his feet, pulling off the rebreather Batman has fastened over his mouth and nose. That's another thing I hate about the Batman. He carries his own anti-fear gas. Jim? The Batman asks, "Are you alright?" The Commissioner nods slowly, still looking more lost than not. "I'm fine now," he asserts quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. A flashing red light outside bathes his face in a passing flush of distress. I watch him with narrowed eyes. Outside, the night is still frenzied with sirens, gunshots, car alarms, screams. My scaries run half naked through the streets, following the whims of their dementia. The eastern skyline is ablaze. The Batman is already moving swiftly away from us. "Take him to Arkham," he says, gesturing to me without even turning around. "We can't," the Commissioner answers quickly. Impressive, really, how swiftly he has regained his wits. "It's been sealed from the inside. The tactical squad has it surrounded, but..." Commissioner Gordon's voice trails off, and we both watch the back of the Batman's cape as he pauses. Then the Dark Knight turns to me slowly, his mouth in a hard, thin line. "You know who's behind this, don't you?" I looked up into the white slits where the Batman's eyes should be. and I smile. His attention darts to the commissioner, who averts his own gaze to the floor. I see the Batman's non-eyes narrow. Oh, Batman, my friend. My grand experiment has been a success. I taste your fear. And if you think you're scared now, wait until you meet Sin Tzu. So that is Scarecrow's chapter. It looks like next week we have a chapter focusing on Tim Drake. I'm really into this this book. I feel like so far out of all of the book club books we've done, it's the most mature. Yeah, Timmy boy. Very excited for him. But I feel like it's the most mature. Unlike how, say, the couple of Justice League books that I've read for book club, or the Sub-Zero novelization I've read for book club, kind of dumbs things down for like a young adult audience, or like teen audience or whatever. This book really isn't dumbing things down. Like, it's bringing up vocabulary words that I don't even fucking know. I think like the one thing that's like weird to me about it so far is like the obsession with like people soiling themselves. That's kind of a weird thing. Like, I mean, I get that like it's a response to fear, so I understand it, but like I was kind of hoping we were gonna just leave that behind in the last chapter, like that was just him. But we got the visual image of Jonathan Crane's urethra, and now that's the thing we got to live with. It's DCAU characters have reproductive organs. It's canon. But yeah, so like I said, that's that for this chapter. I think, you know what? I do want to put into... Oh, I didn't put Ichabod Crane into the pop culture references. And I should probably put the Lady of Justice in there as well, because that's like, that's a known thing, right? So I've got just an extra row here that nothing's gonna be done with. Delete that, and I can combine things to make it look a little bit better. I'm a sucker for spreadsheets, and I want them all to look beautiful. So it's just a thing about me. My fiance doesn't understand it. I don't understand it either. I think it's just because like I try to be an organizational person, and spreadsheets are a form of organizing information. There we go. Okay. So yeah, so that's it for today. We'll pick up next week with Tim Drake. Once again, Thursday at noon. You can expect a video on the channel, on the YouTube channel, on Sunday. James did like a quick response to the release of the Snyder Cut coming up. And then, our typical Twitch stream schedule is Tuesday is Tuesday's James doing Justice League Adventures. Wednesday is now Ted doing video games. He started doing the Batman the Animated Series Game Boy game yesterday and got through the first level and I think some of the second level. It looks pretty complicated. He got through he beat the first boss and everything. And then, as usual, on Thursdays, it's me doing the book club. And then you can expect our breakdown of Batman The Adventures Continues. Like I said earlier, I think on Wednesday is what we're shooting for, because we've already been putting out, like, random extra videos on Wednesdays. So it'll please the algorithm, I guess, if we continue to do that. But yeah, that's basically the schedule. We're talking about potentially trying to do like a live stream event or series of events where we cover the Arrowverse multiverse. So that'll be something that we try to pound out. I was at the start of trying to plan this, like, I was just like, hey, what if we did it in 24-hour streams to raise money for charity? But I looked at the I looked at what that's gonna entail, and basically it would be like 35 24-hour streams. So that would put us in 3 years worth of content, and then by that point there will be even more content, because everything's wrapped into the Arrowverse now. We've got the DCEU, we've got Stargirl, Titans, Doom Patrol, probably that Green Lantern series that's coming up, though I think that the footage they used for that was from the Green Lantern movie. I don't really know what their intentions were there. Maybe they'll be connecting them together. So maybe we'll try to figure out a different way to go about doing that. Maybe just doing like more long or more short streams for that idea. I don't know. Because I just know that, like, stretching that out over 3 years and doing a 24-hour stream once a month is going to fuck up my sleep schedule. So it's definitely something that will need to be figured out. But that being said, that's it for today. We'll pick up next week with Tim Drake, who, from what I've heard, is still a 13-year-old boy in this book, which to me places us like during the new Batman adventures. But yeah, that's it. So y'all have a good day, whoever's still in here, and I will see you next week, or in the Discord, or on Twitter, or wherever you want to find me. But I love y'all, and I will catch y'all later.